then what's that movie?
Board to reconvene. Call to order. We're going to start off this morning's meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. John Kersey, followed by a moment of prayer, silence, and meditation.
Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We also have a special treat for us all this morning. Seeing how it's the holiday season, we're going to be regaled with a wonderful Christmas message. Mr. Bingham.
Is this one on? Okay. You've all heard this song before. We don't have a piano to play with it. Chestnuts roasting on an open fire, Jack Frost nipping at your nose, Yuletide carols being sung by a choir, and Ridgecrest folks wearing warmer clothes. Everybody knows a turkey and some mistletoe help to make the season bright. Tiny tots with their eyes all aglow will find it hard to sleep tonight. They know that Santa's on his way. He's loaded lots of toys and goodies on his sleigh. And every mother's child is gonna spy to see if reindeer really know how to fly. And so I'm offering this simple phrase to kids from 1 to 92. Although it's been said many times, many ways, Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas.
Concessions or anything like that? I mean, could we raise money for the GSA by having
I will answer yes.
Okay.
And since Peggy's got to be out of here at noon, we're going to take that as your TAC report also. Thank you very much.
If you're happy with that, Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Adam. That was beautiful. Appreciate it. Merry Christmas to everybody. Brings us to item number 3, public comments. This time is reserved for the public to address the board about matters not on the agenda. No action can be taken on non-agenda items unless authorized by law. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Anybody willing to take advantage of public comments, now's your time.
Stan Rotora. Last speaker was pretty hard to top, so I'm not going to try. I actually have 2 comments. I'll try to be quick. About 8 months ago, maybe 9, possibly 10, I stood here and asked if the TAC was going to be tasked to peer review the DRI report. The response that I got was that the TAC would be reviewing the DRI report as soon as they were officially up, running, and organized. I went to the last TAC meeting, and it wasn't clear, quite frankly, whether that whether or not the TAC officially has been tasked or not. And many of the members, I think, question whether or not they were supposed to be doing that. And so my request is that you officially task the TAC to not only review the DRI report and work with the water manager, but also any other issues associated with the aquifer and the hydrology, that kind of thing. That is why we have the TAC, and I think we need to utilize them more than we have in the past, or have up to date, I should say. And that leads into my second comment, is that I got the impression in a couple comments that were made by Stetson employees that the TAC wasn't being utilized because Stetson didn't have enough money to actually work with the TAC, or the PAC, and get them involved the way they should be. And my feeling is that's not the way to run a program. Trying to run a program on a shoestring budget is not appropriate. 6 or 7 months ago, we were told here in this meeting that there was going to be an ad hoc finance committee that I thought one of the jobs was to actually set up and institute an actual standing finance committee that would put together a finance plan. You know, we've got the POA&M that talks about what we're going to do. What we don't have is the other side of the equation that says, where do we get the revenue? So I would like to suggest that we follow through with putting together the finance committee and initiate a finance plan so that we know how we're going to get the money, where the money is going to come from, etc. Thank you.
Who's next? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to special presentations. I don't believe we have any scheduled special presentations, none presented, so consent moves to item 5, consent agenda. Items may be removed from the consent agenda for discussion by the board. Item A is approve the minutes of the board meeting October 19th, 2017. B is approved expenditures in the amount of $66,241.27.
I will move approval with one correction to 5A. It should actually read approved minutes of board meeting November 16th, 2017.
Okay, before we go to a vote, is anybody in the public wishing to have a comment on consent agenda items? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Make the modification from October 19th to November 16th. And up for other thoughts from the board members or a motion to move the item.
I don't think the motion's been seconded, right?
Yeah, I move that we approve the consent calendar with that revision to the date on the minutes.
And I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item 6, report from Technical Advisory Committee. Mr. Sinatra.
Sing it.
Mr. Sinatra.
I didn't make up a song for all this stuff here. Okay, we had our meeting Wednesday, December 13th at 10 a.m., and we had all enough people to begin the quorum.
Can you hear him in the back? Raise your hand.
Only if he sings.
They cannot hear you. Can you speak up, please?
I can speak up. All right, we had our enough to start the quorum meeting at 10 a.m. We had no public comments at that time, so then we moved on to the previous meeting minutes for November 2nd that they were then approved. First item that we had was a discussion and a presentation by Tim Ross from the DWR. He came in for our basin area and gave his DWR SGMA Sigma activities presentation, and then was available for any questions or comments. DWR's assistance is being offered to meet the GSR requirements. DWR Technical Assistance website is also coming. Importantly, transducers will soon be available to assist recording groundwater data on the daily level if needed. Mr. Ross also stated that digital models are not required as long as all needed information is presented. However, we already have hydrogeologic models set up and they are being extended. More data is being added to them. He thought that was great. And that was it with his presentation. Next item, Jeff Helsley discussed the priority projects and tasks. Proposition 1 application has been submitted. No other comments at this. Then the DRI model review task was then presented by Jean Morin. Outline was also presented, and the draft report will soon be coming. A checklist will be sent to all TAC members. Stetson will assign TAC review items very soon, and any questions regarding the Stetson DRI review model will be quickly answered. When presented to the TAC members, they will have 2 weeks to review the report and reply by the 24th. Just to let you know, we were offered that time, and we are still working with any comments that we would like to give them. DRI will also provide any needed data indicated by Stetson, and data items regarding the Brown and Caldwell model will also be obtained if needed. Of note, the TAC has stated that Stetson may provide additional items via email and mail to us, to individual TAC members who may return comments and recommendations individually. Stetson may also request the TAC to create ad hoc groups for other items presented in the agenda meetings. The Navy will also provide any information that's needed. The database development is next. The progress review was then presented by Steve Reich. The structure of the database is done for Phase 1 and will move forward. An evaluation is now needed. A discussion regarding this assistance occurred, and TAC members indicated they would like to see an agenda item or task within the POAM that will be provided. Next, the next current TAC discussion and review items requested by Groundwater Authority members. The first item, a request regarding the USGS model, and if there is spring water or other surface water flows from the El Paso Basin that may be used. The USGS model contains available surface water and spring water recharge data used in the previous groundwater models or other reports that may affect their surface recharge modeling in IWV. They researched this, and they used all information that was there that would affect our groundwater. Tim Parker then afterwards asked that a request be made to the GA to allow the TAC to discuss possible future sites for stream gauges in the IWV canyons. These would be in addition to Sand and Grapevine canyons. Tim Parker discussed the SkyTem project in progress. Funding from the state and from Denmark has been officially approved, joining funds given by the IWV water providers. This will go through hydrogeologic, geologic, lithic, and seismic data to assist with our new groundwater model changes. Mr. Parker also mentioned the Salt Nutrient Management Plan final draft report is complete and available for comments by the TAC. Next item, ongoing TAC items discussion. Pretty much this is the quick CASGEM report regarding the change to over the new ownership by the IWV-GA. All IWV monitor well data presented by KCWA and the Navy has also been updated and is updated only twice a year. Next, discussion of future agenda items took place. The first draft POAM chart and progress outline, along with the first draft potential action schedule, or PAS, was presented by Stetson. TAC future agenda items will be listed in the PIS. As a result, the TAC is highly recommending to the GA and Stetson that the PAS list have no more than 2 current items assigned 2 weeks before the TAC agenda meeting, and additionally, no more than 2 future items be listed at this time and assigned as a response timing listed with all items in the POAM and the PAS. The next item, future TAC meeting dates, recommended for approval. The TAC meetings will remain on the first Thursday of each month. This is what we are assuming will continue. It's recommended that TAC meeting time frame be increased to 3 hours. So we would start at 1 p.m. instead of 2 p.m. And the next 3 meetings that we have discussed, January 4th, February 1st, and March 1st, all at 1 p.m. If the GA approves, the TAC will then plan in this manner for every additional month in 2018. The last item, committee member announcements or comments. One comment from Tim Parker suggested the TAC consider early engagement with sustainable management criteria rather than later. And that is a recommendation for Stetson. And that is it. We had our adjournment and we were finished.
Thanks, sir. Board members, any questions before we go to the public?
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Adam, you're very thorough. I got to tell you that, man. And you sing well. Excellent, actually.
Thank you very much.
It's my understanding that the salt nutrient plan is no longer drafted and was already submitted to Lahontan. Is that true?
It was just submitted
the
just
microphone.
after our meeting. It was just submitted just after our meeting, and it was there. I have a note on this as well. It is being sent to the State Water Resources Control Board in the South Lahontan area, and any additional comments that they were looking for that we could give for that presentation, and that will come in a few months.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, let's open up the public for public. I'm sorry.
I have one. Adam, when you talked about you only want 2 items on the agenda that you're be working on at the time before you meet, and then you only want 2 as future agenda items, how are you getting that direction? Are you getting it through Stetson, or are you getting it through us, or where does that come from? Because I don't know. I thought you had a whole bunch of items on your agenda.
We did, and we're going to condense, get those down to 2 items, which was the request coming from Stetson. They have all of the data, all of the information that is needed for the GSP, and they have outlines of all the parts that we will be moving for, and they are going to recommend and give those for our agenda. And we thought that was great. Can we condense them to 2 items that will currently be looked at, and then 2 future items for us to prepare and get ready for? It made it easier than having a whole list of them all.
Thank you.
That will still be
Thank
there
you.
available. They did tell us. But we'll have the agenda condensed down.
Okay, now let's go to the public and ask the public for comments on the TAC report. Any takers? Seeing none, we close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for comment and consideration. I have one.
Okay.
I get the sense, and this is a structural kind of question, I get the sense that the TAC is moving along at a good pace, and you're satisfied with the work and the level of participation and the coordination between the TAC and the Water Resource Manager and the TAC and the board. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes, let me add one thing. There was another comment quickly spoken at the meeting that things may increase very quickly.
What do you mean things?
The movements of everything to obtain the GSP that is needed to be submitted to the state. If that does happen, we are excited to be able to work with Stetson, and even though things may move forward back and forth, we are communicating well with each other,
right,
listening to each other, and updating as quickly as we can to meet all the needs that will be required for the GSP.
I think that is a fair assumption. I think things are going to happen more quickly than more slowly. So if I was anticipating leadership of that organization, what I would be is positioning that team to be able to do more work rather than less work. There was a comment made earlier about peer review of issues and reports. Talk to me a minute about that, please.
That was the idea that everything that is being brought for the agenda is good, and it would also be good for individual items to be suggested to members of the TAC that are simply giving stuff that will be coming up so that we can also give comments. And it's a one-on-one setup. That was mentioned, and then we talked about that. And Stetson said that's a good idea. And if needed, they will ask we assign things with an ad hoc group to help increase everything.
Right. Are you comfortable that when you come with your minutes and you have some questions from the board and there's back and forth, you're getting sufficient answers in a sufficient time? Do you feel that you're getting, we're communicating well? And
I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
With these additional things that we do recommend, I think that will make it that much better as well.
I'm asking you to please be very open and very forthright with your critique of our ability to communicate back and forth, because it's going to flex as things pick up pace. We're going to need better and improved communication.
To be
constantly.
honest, communication back and forth, letting us know precisely through Stetson what you need tech to be going at with 2 items and 2 future items so that we will get at it. And then once it's done, we move to the next one.
Thank you, sir.
We like that.
We got a new call sign for you. It's Frank.
No, Frankie.
Frank Sinatra.
Frankie.
Okay, any other board members with a...
I'm not going to start singing because it's in my mind to start answering. That way.
I have a question. How are they going to get those 2 new agenda items? Are we designating that information to you? In that case, how are we getting the information to Stetson? because I have not seen that come directly from the board. If necessary, I'd like to see an item on the agenda that says direction to Stetson or something like that for TAC and PAC, so it's clearly defined and we all understand what that need is, and have those directions to them well defined. If it's done in committee, then so be it. I just didn't know how it's done, so I'm asking.
We're continuing with Stetson, and anything that Stetson puts down and recommends, that gets put into our agenda.
Did you want to talk?
Now, is that
Sorry.
not quite yet? Sorry about that.
No, keep going.
Okay. Is that not quite the answer that you're looking for?
Can I interject? Because I think I may have the answer.
Yeah.
The answer should be the POA&M. The
Okay,
answer
yeah.
should be the POA&M and
that's-
how we work through you through the POA&M, which is going to be our guiding light, as you call it.
Yeah,
Correct.
That mixed with the PAC that was shown to us will help, because the POAM is the outline of everything in the time and the changes, because it is open and will move with time. And then the PAS, that one will show us the individual items that we're moving to next time, and a timing involved. If it's a couple months out, you have 3 months to discuss this, then we need our answer, then it's done. Then we move to the next item that's important. That's all part of the GSP. That's how we understood that and had our discussion.
Thank you, Frank.
Just to help in answer to the mayor's question, we did present the poem, the POAM, both to the TAC and the PAC. We pulled out of the poem all of the preliminary, suggested, proposed work task items for the agenda for both the TAC and the PAC going forward for almost 2 years, based upon what we think our schedule is to address certain things. The goal here is to get it in front of the TAC and the PAC, have them review it, which we did on the 6th. We haven't gotten any comments back, but we're looking for comments. It'll go back to the PAC and the TAC. The goal at some point would be to have the TAC and the PAC look at those lists where we're finding, get it where everybody's comfortable with those, bring it to the board at least for a preliminary approval for the board for us to be able to schedule agenda items for future PAC and TAC committee meetings. So the goal here, this is going to be part of my report, and this is in follow-up to direction we got from Chairman Gleason, was that poem should become the guiding light for us going forward, and provide the details so people know what they're going to be looking at, what we're going to be doing going forward to the next several months. Looking at the poem as we looked at it, unless you're good at it, unless you use that kind of a document, it's a little hard to find these items and to see where they're going to show up on these agenda items. So we pulled them out and tabulated them with actual meeting dates for the PAC and the TAC meetings, what we intend to be talking about at those meetings. It's very preliminary. It's only suggested. There's ideas we may be getting from the PAC and the TAC that we did include. And there may be some concerns, like we've had in the past, that we've included some things on the PAC or the TAC that maybe the board doesn't feel like should be on their agenda. We want to make sure those are all vetted before we approve it as our guide going forward.
Thanks, sir. Commander Longbottom, any thoughts and process on how we're using this POA&M?
Are you going to do a presentation on the poem during your?
No, not here. No.
Not at all. Okay,
No.
I'll go ahead and I did a review on it, so I'm anxious to hear back from the PAC and the TAC related to whether there's any items that are missing. My primary concern is whether we have the durations accurate, because it's very easy to say, yeah, we're going to be there by 2020 if the durations are made to fit that 2020 date. So I think the most important thing we can do here is realistically look at the tasks and be conservative in our estimate of how long they're going to take, so that we can, no kidding, determine where we're actually falling to have this ready. Yeah. And then be able to adjust our processes related to meeting schedules, et cetera, to compensate so that we can hit our deadline. Yeah. The other couple minor comments I had is it would be beneficial if we identified the critical path in here. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of relationships, and to your point of being able to clearly look at this and see what the most important items are. Normally we do that in red, but if we can identify the critical path, that if these actions slip a day, then the overall plan slips a day. There's a lot of things that happen concurrently that, hey, if you slide a month, it's not that big of a deal. But the critical path items, if they slide a day, the whole thing slides a day. So that would be beneficial. percentage complete would probably be beneficial as well moving forward. So as we get into some of these tasks and your vertical line, your red vertical line, as it starts moving into a task, if it's 50% through that task duration, are we actually 50% complete, or are we only 10% complete? That would kind of help us real time track if we're ahead or behind schedule on a particular task. Thank you for adding the additional. I mean, the format wise is great. We have money associated with it. The thing I would say to Stan's point earlier is we really need to have, we've got total budget per task, but we need to make that time based. So we need to know, if a task is occurring Q1, Q2, how much money do we need for that task in Q1 and Q2, or better yet, in January, February, March, April, May, June. And then when you assign dollars per month per task and you roll them all the way down, that will tell you how much this board needs to have in the kitty, so to speak, to pay you to do all of the tasks that are required. Because again, the POAM is going to be worthless if we don't have the money to execute the task on time. And those are just my general comments, but definitely a great step forward on this one. Well done.
Thank you, Commander. We've gone to the public on this, right? And we're up for a vote to receive and file the TAC report or further discussion.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay, moves us to item number 7, report from the PAC.
The PAC members took the following actions to make the following requests for the board to address. Under the PAC agenda for December 6th, item 4, review staff responses to the PAC report for November 16th, IWVGA meeting. There was discussion regarding the A7 staff response addressing how to deal with public comments presented at PAC meetings. Quote, the PAC should refer those comments to the board and not try to be a conduit for all public input, end quote. The PAC members believe that it is a critical task for them to listen to the concerns of members of the public and, quote, provide all water users in the basin with a meaningful voice and representation on policy matters of the board associated with SGMA, end of quote, as stated in Section 5.6 of the bylaws. After committee discussion, the PAC members suggested a process for memorializing comments, making them a part of the public record by including them with the minutes of the meeting so that public comments will not be overlooked or fail to be addressed. A handout on green paper will be provided at the meeting, and we will ask the commenter to write out the comment so that no one can misinterpret it by trying to restate it. Write out the comment, and a notation will be made at the bottom of the page to please follow up with, and we said Water Resources Manager, and give contact information, but it could be the general manager or whoever the board would indicate would be the proper person to receive this. And the person who makes the comment would have their name, their contact information, so that people could get back to them to address their concerns. So the PAC requests board approval for this process for how to handle public participation from the PAC meetings and make it part of the decision-making process. Also under this discussion item, we did have one of our committee members who handed out a paper and requested that we consider canceling meetings or not meeting, and he gave pros and cons and whatever. So we delayed discussion of that until we had some discussion of further agenda items. And after the item 6, where we discussed the poem, that committee member withdrew his request that we not meet. So we are going to continue to meet. We do have at the present time one specific task, which is to finish working on the outreach strategy. Number 2, under PAC agenda item 5, by roll call vote, PAC members approved a motion to request board approval for scheduling future PAC meetings on the first Thursday of each month, beginning with January 4th, 2018, at 6 p.m. at the IWVWD conference room. So we do need approval for those meetings. Under item 6, PAC members reviewed the POAM and the separate handout entitled PAC Potential Action Schedule, dated December 1st. The PAC understands that the GSA board assigns all of our tasks. So we request the board approval at the appropriate time. We may be premature right now, but after we work on some comments and review of that specific schedule for the PAC, we would ask that the board would approve that as an assignment of tasks for the PAC. Currently, the PAC has one task assignment to complete and present outreach plan for board approval by March 2018, which is item 4 on the schedule, derived from the poll. And I attached that to the report there. Under PAC agenda item 7, by roll call vote, PAC members approved a motion to adopt the GSP Stakeholder Communication and Engagement Guidance document prepared by DWR as a framework for developing the outreach strategy. So the PAC requests board approval of this action. In connection with this action, there was consensus of PAC members that Lorelei Oviatt, advisory PAC member, contact Megan Person, Kern County's new Director of Communications, and request her assistance to review the DWR guidance document and the outline that we have started for an outreach strategy, and to give the PAC some initial thoughts. There are 3 items where the PAC seeks direction from the GSA board. The first regards a request made at the December 6th TAC meeting for individual members of the TAC and the PAC to be given login information to access the database management site, IWVDMS geodatabase, for the GSP, and to provide individual feedback comments to Steve Johnson on the design and functionality of the site, and provide that at the January 4th TAC and PAC meetings. So these are individual comments to be sent in to him. It won't necessarily be agendized for the full committee to address these items. So how do we deal with individual tasks for committee members? The second regards individual review by PAC members of DWR best management practices documents in order for the members to become familiar with terminology and background information that they can use as we have discussions regarding policy matters. There are 6 BMP documents. The most recent one is the draft Sustainable Management Criteria BMP, currently under review with comments due on January 8th. And this is related to item number 10 on the purple-headed list for our potential. And that item says sustainability goals and sustainability management criteria discussion / outreach. And that's on the PAC potential action schedule from the poem. The third item is the list of references forwarded by Scott O'Neill of the TAC regarding AEM, aerial electromagnetic SkyTEM background information papers. Some individual PAC members may want to review these references, so this would be another individual action by committee members. So the PAC members requested general board approval for PAC members to take these opportunities to review such items in order to understand background information for comments and actions they will take as the development of the GSP proceeds. The PAC requests board approval for 2 presentations to be agendized for the January 4th, 2018 PAC meeting. The PAC members would like to hear from PAC advisory members Ryan Klausch, representing the Bureau of Land Management, and John Kersey, representing the Department of the Navy, reviewing how the federal agencies address public involvement and the process for handling public comments for projects and planning efforts. This agenda item was suggested by Lorelei Oviatt and agreed to by the rest of the committee. These presentations would help to provide background for number 5 on the draft PAC potential action schedule. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Before we go to the public, let's go to the board and see if we got any quick questions.
There's a number of items, Donna, that the PAC is requesting us to approve. Because they are not on the agenda, may we accept them and then say yes, and we'll put them on the agenda to approve officially? Or is it, do you want just direction rather than aye and no? What is it you're seeking?
Well, I thought at the last meeting we had discussed putting an agenda item on your board agenda regarding tasking of TAC and PAC, or specifically PAC.
Well, obviously it's not on here, so how do we address that, Mr. Hall?
Use a consensus?
Yeah. Can we do it that way?
No, we can't. Consensus, we can't do any of that.
Thank you.
I mean, we've been chasing this tail for quite a while.
Yep.
If the PAC would like us to do something, make something an action item, they need to get it to staff in time so that it can be put on the agenda and reviewed. This is the first time I've seen this. I don't even know if there are any legal issues in it. Quick read, I'm not seeing any, but I haven't had any time to review it, and it's not on the agenda. So we can't make action items out of things. With that said, sometimes when a board acts, you can act without an action item. You can, for example, direct staff to do something. But we have a more formalized committee here, so we really need to have action items. And if the PAC has something that they would like to bring forward, they really need to get it to staff so that we can get it, look at it, and put it on the agenda. We don't have that. And just a generalized line that says tasking the PAC, that doesn't meet the Brown Act requirement. So we really need the PAC to give us stuff at least with 1 week of time for staff to review it. And before the board meetings, which are on Thursday, we post on Fridays. We could post on Mondays, but we post on Fridays. So take that Friday and then 1 week before that. So the Friday before, 1 week before that.
Okay, so
Well,
Donna, is your schedule accommodate that requirement?
perhaps in the future, but not this time because the
enough.
meeting was like 1 week after
Got
our
it.
PAC meeting.
We're going to help you out with this, Donna.
Yeah, we had discussed this before, though. We would like to have a standing agenda item for the tasking. And I don't know, we're having a volunteer do the minutes. It was difficult even for me to get, except from my own notes from the meeting, the items, the motions, the requests, what the committee members had talked about. I can try to do that, but as I said, I would like for you, maybe I just make that request in writing now. I saw some of these things, like having the presentations on our next agenda, would come up during the preparation of the agenda for review and comment, but not necessarily by the full board. I don't know, we've been struggling with this item for a long time. Sometimes we put things on our agenda that have been taken off and that sort of thing. I think that's a concern of the committee.
Those items, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, and then Phil.
Phil.
I want to be, really clear here. We should have a placeholder on the agenda. What I had understood was we were going to have a placeholder on this agenda like we do for public comment, where we always had a spot. If we have something to address to the PAC or the TAC, we can have that there. That placeholder is there, and we will put whatever action items are in there at that point in time. We have not formally adopted it. I've suggested to this board, and everybody seemed to be okay with it, a process wherein if we run into a situation where we got a great opportunity for like a presentation, some educational tool for the PAC, that the board chair on his own can task that to the PAC without it having to go through the board. That's sort of that non-real action item thing. It's the same reason why you can set up special meetings. You can say if you want a special meeting. But I don't know what these items are totally. I just now received this. So we got to be careful with what we're doing with action items.
Got it. Are you done, Mayor? I'm sorry.
Well, I just wanted to see, because when you're asking for like the approval of the draft PAC action schedule, I don't see anything that makes me cringe here when I read it, but equally I'm not enlightened by it. So without knowing what groundwater modeling results, for instance, how do we address those things? Because it seems like we're going to lag behind all of this every time we try to do it the right way, and I don't want to see lagging behind. How do we address it? Somebody smarter than I.
I don't think that person exists, Mayor.
Well, I don't know.
Not in this room. Maybe in the back row back there. I don't
Yeah.
know, but no. Okay, let me try tackling a couple.
Go ahead. I was going to say there's two people over here too.
Let's go over there.
The better looking guy first.
I just had a suggestion, and of course there's the coordination of the meeting time when the PAC and TAC hold the meeting. They give them enough time for preparing meeting minutes, but potentially what would be beneficial is if that TAC and PAC report were prepared in sufficient time, a section at the bottom of that report for requested agenda add items be listed, and then that's sent to staff. And so at that point, the actual minutes can be part of this package ahead of this meeting, and staff can work with the PAC and TAC leading up to the actual meeting to sort out what the content of those items are. We're getting them in enough time, staff's getting them in enough time to sort out what the issues are. Everybody's getting a read ahead on all of these presentations prior to this meeting and can be prepared for questions.
Donna, does that help you?
Well,
Maybe.
well, maybe. We are going to need to prepare the agenda for the January 4th meeting almost immediately, because it will need to be posted the end of December because of the holidays. Correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess some of these things will come up on the preparation of the agenda, and they will be reviewed before the agenda is finalized for the January 4th meeting. But as Adam stated, we expect an increase in the pace of activity here for these committees. And so we equally need more timely approval for some of these things from the board, since that's what the bylaws state.
Bob.
Wait, I was before you, but you can go. No, go ahead. I'm just being funny. No, I won't.
I guess what I would like to see is not being asked every little piece of direction we've given. This board's given direction through the chair that the PAC work on an outreach plan. In receiving this report, I don't know that it's necessary for the PAC to come back to us and say, is it okay if we develop our proposal based upon a framework that the state DWR has put together? I mean, we've asked you to come up with a proposal. If that's the method you want to use as your foundation for your proposal, then you guys do that and make your recommendation. I don't know that you need to ask permission to review best management practices documents that DWR has put out. If the PAC believes it will help them do their job, to do a little homework and read those documents, I don't see the harm in them doing that. I don't know that there needs to be a drawn-out 3-hour discussion at the PAC meeting about what's in those documents. I think that's something that each PAC member, if they want to be better informed about this process, that would, to me, that's good initiative on their part to try to learn that stuff. So I appreciate the difficulty this is in trying to get a feel for what we're comfortable with and what you guys want to work on. But I just want to let you know, as a member of this board, I don't feel the need to micromanage you. If I've given you direction to come up with a proposal on an outreach plan, I'm okay with however you guys want to come up with that proposal. I don't need to approve each step. Is the only point I want to make.
Mr. Brown.
Okay, a couple. I think we're all kind of saying the same thing, but right at the end of your meeting, if you guys reviewed the action items and then said these are the action items we want the board to approve, whether we need to or not, right then you could just email it to the chair and to Stetson or the chair or somebody. I mean, whoever the point of contact is for us. So right there, that the actions are the most important thing. The minutes will come. But that way you don't have to have labor over minutes, and it could be instantaneous right after you're done with your meeting. The other thing was, if I understand Stetson Engineering, is that they're going to be tasking the TAC and the PAC based on the POAM. So right there seems to be a nexus where you get tasked, and maybe some of your stuff pertains to the groundwater management plan or not, but. It seems to me that's another way to get approval to do something without coming to the board. And I agree with Bob. I don't think it's our intention to look at all the details. I like your report actually, and I think everything here is a good suggestion. And then the final thing is I thought we did empower the chair to approve stuff like this that's not hypercritical to what we're doing, so that the ball could be moving forward. So I think I heard Phil already say that I don't know what's the word he used, like not real or something. It was kind of interesting, but a not real action or something like that.
It wasn't a formal action, but I think we had consensus that that's where we were moving, and it made sense with the way we've got the bylaws because the board chair can set a special meeting.
Okay, all right. So in that vein, do we need to formally approve the power of the chair to approve some things for actions on these subcommittees?
Not unless you want to.
You don't have to prove it not. I haven't.
Okay, well, that's kind of what I thought, but he's saying it was like inferred or something. Anyways, there was something else, but I totally lost my train of thought, so I guess the train's wrecked.
Mr. Brown, we'll get back to you. I'm sure we'll get back to you. A couple things I want to talk about that are right here on this page. Your first one, I'm just going to go through the list of things you requested to give you some feedback from me. The PAC requests board approval of this process and how to handle public participation from the PAC meetings and the decision-making process. I'm all for that. Matter of fact, I suggest we keep a log so that the people that take time out of their day to come and make a public presentation to the PAC, they want to have their voice heard, not only do we annotate it and treat it special, but we also maintain a log of it somehow, and then we have a checkoff list to make sure that you forward that log to us, and all board members get a chance to read and review on a periodic basis a log of green-colored or purple-colored cards, whatever you like. First Thursdays of each month is fine by me, if that's what you guys want to do. The next one, item 3, approval of draft PAC action schedule. I think that's a little premature because it has not been formalized. Number 4, bringing Megan in to help us create some information and give us some counsel on developing that. I'm all for that. I also agree with statements made previously that we don't need to micromanage. We just need to assign you tasks. Something about individuals calling. I don't like that. Individuals calling Mr. Johnson about ideas because we pay him. The public, he works for us. And I'm not sure whether if you're busy, you'll get inundated with individual comments, and I'd like to hear your comments, your thoughts about authorizing individual PAC members to address you directly. What do you think about that? I don't like it. What do you think?
It can certainly get out of hand pretty fast. It doesn't bother me once in a while, especially emails. I get emails sometimes, and something I can respond to right away, and there's really no.
Are you going to charge us for that?
No, there's no issue with that because there's no real.
If you respond to a member of the public,
right,
you're not charging us.
No.
For that moment. Well, it's a free country.
Yeah.
People
if
can
it gets out of
want.
hand, I'll let you know. And I worked with Alan a lot on this because Alan saw some things that started to get out of hand, and he stepped in between me and some of the comments, and that worked out very well. I think that we have a system to address that.
Thank you very much. So that's just going to happen the way it happens. Yeah. You don't need approval. If they send emails to them, fine. If you respond, it's up to you.
Yeah.
The next item, number 6, I think we're down to, and I have a little hand note here saying, okay, I'm okay with this. 2 presentations be agendized for January 4th. I'm okay with that. So those are my thoughts to satisfy your immediate need as far as what prerogative I have as a chairman to respond directly to those requests. I've just taken it. And we're going to more formalize and get in a better way of getting that communication. So let me ask you a question, Donna. Let me ask you the same thing I asked Frank. Are you comfortable that your organization is moving in a way that you expect it to? Are you comfortable with the communications you're getting from the board? And you have. Tell me about how you feel about how things are going for you. Are we doing enough to help you?
I think so. I think the hard part is ahead when we begin discussion of some of these issues. And even the bylaws say that we can have a majority and minority report if our board members disagree on certain things. But I think, yes, I think that the committee members are involved and they bring write-ups or things that they want to bring up under each agenda item. They put that on a heading of their handout, and we hand that out when each item is discussed. And we try to go over their input as well. So I think we're doing pretty well.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? The board, and I'm looking for a motion.
Chairman Gleason, I got a matter of clarification. So what I'm understanding is that if Donna sends us an email with the items that she wants considered, obviously the managers will take a look at it, but you have the ability as the chairman to make that decision whether or not they can move forward on those items, and the items that you don't make a decision on, then we can put on the agenda for the next GSA meeting. Is that correct?
Phil?
That is correct. Yeah. Certain items need to be actioned, certain won't. And just, I've just now got this, so I'm looking through it. There's item 5. This seems really to be asking that we give the PAC informational documents so they can get up to speed on what I will admit as a water attorney is a very black art, frankly. It's confusing. We had already started trying to do that. I think that's a great idea. I think they should have documents provided to them that they can start reading, and we've given them some. I know Alan has, but I think the person who should maybe pick those was probably Steve, because there's a lot of documents floating around out there that say how to do this stuff and parts of it, but Steve needs to be on point with that as to which paths we're taking. So it's a great item, but I think Steve should maybe be giving them the bibliography that they need.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or motion? We have a motion, and before we go to the second, I just want to make sure it's clear that you have a March deadline for the outreach program. What I would like to see is a recommendation from the TAC on a website. What are we doing with the website? How is it going to develop? How are we going to manage it? We're going to have a POA&M that the public needs to have access to. How are we going to get that out there? I think the website is the way to go. But please come back in March with an analysis and a recommendation for a website. Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Move us to number 8, approval of advanced funds agreement for number 0317 with Indian Wells Valley Water District in an amount not to exceed $500,000. Mr. Brown, can I kick this off to you, or please?
So I am pleased to announce that we approved the agreement that Jim had drafted for us, and want to congratulate Jim on making it short and concise and very clear. 2 pages is a marvelous document for me from an attorney. So there was a lot of discussion. I'm sure you guys have read the newspapers. I think part of it is some confusion on that we're giving versus loaning versus prepaying, advancing. And so I stressed continuously that this is an advance on future costs. And it was structured that way from the beginning. I'm just happy that we're making those funds available, and we agreed on the agreement. And I guess you guys just have to say yes, and we'll give you some money. And how cool is that?
Thank you, sir. Let's open a public comment. Anyone in the public wishing to make comment, now's your chance.
Stan Rotora. I'm not against the advanced money. Obviously, we need the money. There's no question about that. I would like to remind everybody, as you all should know, is that we've known that we've had or are having financial problems for many months. This should not be a surprise. We all knew this was coming, and we sort of let it get down to the very last minute. I was at the Water District meeting when this was passed. I think there were people on the board that felt if they didn't pass it, then our whole GSA structure was going to go down the tubes. The state would step in. I don't think that's an appropriate way to handle business, even among the board members. What I would like to see in the future is a little more proactive financial management. And I go back to what I said earlier during public comment. I think we are in desperate need of a financial committee and have that financial committee prepare a financial plan so that we know what we're doing from month to month and year to year. While I'm up here, I'd also like to comment that I don't think that $500K is going to be enough potentially to get us through the next 4 or 5 or 6 months. I don't like the idea of constraining Stetson, who I think, quite frankly, is doing a great job. But if you tell them they can only spend $60,000 a month or $70,000 a month, you're constraining them to, or limiting them to do a lot of stuff that should be done up front. I think a lot of program managers will tell you it's what you do up front early that counts. All right? So I would urge you to don't just take this $500,000 and say, hey, we're good now, because we're not. My feeling is this is just the tip of the iceberg. We need to lay the foundation for where we're going. We need to do the heavy lifting up front, and what we do up front will push us through to the end. We keep constraining our schedule, making it tighter and tighter, collapsing everything down. All we're going to do is run into more problems downstream. So I would beseech you to start looking at the financial management just as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Judy Decker. I concur with everything that Stan said. And I will repeat something that I've said before to you. You are a board, a new governing entity, and you all, well, except for Commander Longbottom, you all sit, excuse me, on other boards for other governing entities, and as such, on those other boards, you are also sitting on committees, including a finance committee. I believe you could accomplish more if you, as this board, formed your own committees, a finance committee, maybe a committee to review the minutes ahead of the meeting. I don't know. You'd have to decide which committees you need. But the confusion over who does what when has been apparent since the very beginning. And it has hampered, I would say, both the TAC and the PAC. And if you had your own committee, you could review, for instance, in a committee meeting ahead of the board meeting, those reports from the PAC and the TAC, and tell them what was wrong and what wasn't. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Decker.
Don Decker. In listening to the suggestions from the board and from the TAC and the PAC, and being a TAC member myself, there is a substantial administrative burden that is shared. And I think one thing that, as you guys are discussing, the procedures, the way to move forward here with some reasonable handoff times, we're crowding the two committee meetings pretty close, 2 weeks to the board meeting. One thing that could be done that might actually be a significant benefit to all would be to move the PAC and TAC meetings backward, give it 3 weeks instead of 2, and provide, for example, for a committee meeting of the board appropriate to whatever the subject matter is, and we would have a more orderly flow of the administrative as well as the technical material. And I think especially as things become more and more hectic, which is, I think, obvious to us all, that having a little more time between those meetings would be a benefit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Decker. Okay, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for comments and your thoughts. Bob.
I just wanted to make a couple clarifying points. And I understand to the members of the public, it looks like perhaps we weren't on top of this and it became a rush issue at the end, but it's not something we had ignored. This is, and to think that this advancement that agreement we're considering today is money directly to pay Stetson. You need to look at this more as a cash flow issue. Kern County secured a very nice grant for us under Prop 1 previously for distressed counties. There's $250,000 there. A certain amount of that money can be spent on the work that Stetson does. The challenge is that the state pays us in a reimbursement basis, so we need to have cash flow in order to start that work and get reimbursed. We're still feeling through, or Kern County's been feeling through, how long it takes to get that reimbursement. So that's another issue that we have to evaluate for cash flow. I understand that it seems simple that we should just be able to put in our revenue streams, but the finance ad hoc committee that we established, we've asked some very basic questions about when we could expect to start, depending on which path we chose of the options that are available to us, when we could expect to see that revenue. The need for this agreement and to have that cash flow is that those options are not to get if we went forward with any of those options, we're not getting money next month or the month after. If we go down one path, we could see revenue in a year. Other paths, we cannot initiate those paths until the GSP is completed. And that's 2020, and then we could institute those kind of fees. So we're looking through all those issues. The reason we went down this path of an advancement with the water district is, one, the water district said they were willing to help, and they had some funding available to help us with the cash flow issue. And two, the other more permanent revenue streams that have evaluated so far are in the future. They're not right now. So this is not something that we're some sort of, putting our fingers in the dike and just hoping we're going to get through this. We've been thinking through this, and this is one step to get us to the point where we're more financially stable. I want to assure you this is not something we've ignored. We've been working on this.
Thank you, Mr. Page. Anybody else?
I'd like to thank the Water District for its vision, its understanding of the situation, and the recognition that even though the vote last Monday night was a difficult one, there really wasn't a lot of choices, because at this point in time, we simply have, as you referred to, a lack of cash flow. Does that mean it's going to get better? It will with the approval of grants. We have been pretty much assured that we have those grants. Do we have the money? No. And can we go to the bank and say, look, these grants have been assured because we are high up in the numbers. We are critically, we have this, we have that. And so when we look at it, I thank the Water District for taking and having the vision to see the need, recognize they had the ability to solve the problem, and recognize that this was not a loan, this was not a grant, this was simply an advancement of funds that they will pay later on in time. We all will end up paying at some point in time. They just recognize that it's now that they could stand up and be an integral part of the achievement of making this happen. And so I am thanking them for their vision and their concern and their caring.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Brown.
I just thought of a couple of things I should add. We at the Water District for a very long time have recognized the fact that someday that we'll be entertaining imported water or treating brackish water. And when we realized this so long ago, we created a fund called Future Source of Supply. And so we've been funding that forever with leftover funds from different things that weren't completely exhausted. And most of that is excess income over expenses. So the good thing is we've been building this fund for a long time, and it's totally liquid. And this is exactly what the fund was for. We thought we were going to have to do it ourselves, and so we were thinking someday we'll have $6 million in there, and maybe we can get it done. But the good thing is now we're working with a team, and everybody is participating. It's a collaboration that's working. So it's even better. So the money's already in an account. We didn't have to borrow from any accounts. It's money that we've already put here just for future source of supply, and it's totally adequate for us to use it. So there's no loss, and it does benefit the ratepayers specifically because we're going to be dividing the cost of imported water in the near future, which is better for everybody. So it's beneficial all the way around, and I'm just glad that we actually put money in a bank account for that, and so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, and thank your board for us. I'm looking for a motion or further discussion.
I will move approval of the advancement agreement with the Indian Wells Valley Water District.
I'll second.
You have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed. Moves on to item number 9. Approve of 6-month operating budget for fiscal year 2018. Who's taking this one? Mr. Scranton.
That's me, Chairman Gleason, members of the board. What I have before you is a 6-month budget that was prepared by Alan. It covers the 6 months. It's a $743,000 budget. $733,000 of this budget of the expenditure is based upon Stetson's budget and the POAM. There is an additional amount of about $10,500 that's budgeted for office expenses, legal services primarily to possibly assist with training the PACT and the TACT regarding SGMA, and then some also additional specialized services, possibly for technical advice for an assessment hearing. The revenue side of this obviously is the $500,000, the advancement from the water district, $50,000 carryover, and then $193,000 in the Proposition 1 grant funding, which allows us to have a presented balanced budget with the assumption that if the Prop 1 grant doesn't come through, we're going to have to come back and address it. And I've been told that we're looking at, we may have that information in March or April. So that is what I have before you. This should allow us funding to be able to allow Stetson to move forward for the next 6 months based upon their schedule that has been approved by this board.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Let's go to the public for your comments. You want to do a comment first? Okay, then go for it.
You're probably not going to be able to answer these questions because you actually didn't create this budget. So, and I can get this to somebody, but the total estimated revenue, if you add up the numbers, it's not 743,000 and change. It's 817,000 and change. So that's one thing. And then on the budget objectives, FY18. It's showing that there's a fund carryover 50K, but it's really based on these other numbers back here. It's really 40,444 because we've already used some of that. So that's not correct. On the other side, our 500K shows up as 425,892, and I'm not sure why, because I'm not sure that we spent it yet because we just have it now. So that's off. On Prop 1 grant, it's saying it's 267,000 and change. And as of 11/15 in the previous budget, it was 194,997 or 977. And then the last thing, I think it's the last thing, on the expenses, the projected expenses FY 218, there's no remaining USG funds in here. It shows on the previous in November. That there was 90K and we used 10,335. So there should be somewhere that money should appear in this budget. So those are my comments, and I'm sure they're easily answered. But I don't expect you to answer them.
You are correct in that matter.
Okay, is there any other comments? Let's go ahead.
I just had one. I don't know if it's a POAM issue or a budget issue, but the one that stuck out to me under the expenses for the numerical groundwater model. In the budget, we're carrying 58,000. In the POAM, it's 895,000. So I don't know if the POAM, it's a typo in the POAM, or if we're not accounting for the true cost of that item in the budget. But there's a definite difference there.
I'll see if I think I can answer. I'm not sure. I have to look at it and get back to you. But I think in the POAM, the larger number, the $800-some thousand, I think that's part of the Prop 1 application because it's consistent with Prop 1 and includes the in-kind contributions from the Navy. I think that's where the big numbers come from.
How much are you calculating for us to provide?
It's a lot, but I don't know what the number is.
Okay.
But I can get those to you.
Yeah.
At least 700 and change.
Yeah.
Now, we might have a problem there.
Just be mindful. This is obviously a work in progress. This budget can be amended by the board at any time. So as I would assume that as we move forward over the next few months, that there will be some adjustments made to this document. So although if there's an addition, we can take care of that. But I think overall, it's a good starting point that we can build on in the future.
Okay, if we're done, I don't think we're done.
I was just going to say, Commander, we'll connect with you because I think the numbers that are in Prop 1 application for the in-kind contributions, we didn't develop, we got from the Navy. But I'll get with you afterward and we'll make sure we're on the same page.
So it's not a real expense to the GSP?
No.
Okay.
It's in-kind services.
All right, we may want to talk about that because if we're just calculating in-kind, I don't know if we necessarily want to put it in the POAM because then it starts creating a numerical conflict between what we think we need money-wise and what our budget actually says. Okay, thank you.
Chairman Gleason, Phil to my right here says he added up the numbers and says they're correct.
I mean, I'm confused as to what Peter was saying because maybe I'm looking at the wrong columns. The top column adds correctly, and the bottom column adds correctly.
They add correctly, but the numbers are wrong. I mean, in the 743,682,
Yeah.
those aren't the same numbers on the front. So,
So you're saying the two sheets are different?
yeah, he gives his summary on the first 2 pages, and then you have these spreadsheets.
Oh, okay.
So in his introduction, it says 743,682, which does agree, but the actual numbers in these columns. Well, for the easy one is we haven't spent any of the 500K, and it's only showing the 425.89 available. And then the other one is the 50K, which comes from the 11-15 budget, is actually 40,444. So they add up correctly in the column, but the origin of the numbers is off. And then the final one, the 267,790, as of 11-15, it was 194,977. So it's the beginning of the numbers and where they were referenced from. So I'm sure it was probably, he might have pulled them from an earlier budget or something, but not the actual. But based on the 11-15 budget, they don't match.
Correct. We can go through, and as we do our first report, we can actually adjust what the actual. This is just proposed, and we'll have our actual revenue.
I understand.
Great. Okay.
Mr. Page.
Yeah, just to, regarding some of Peter's comments, the other thing that I noticed was, regarding how much carryover money there is in the general fund right now was, I think, identified in the report as 50,000. But I know just last month when we approved Stetson's expenses for September of 58,000, that item itself said that of that 58,000, 28,000 of that payment was going to come from the general fund. So 75 minus 28 gets you below 50 just in one payment. So I'd like to make sure we were clear on exactly how much money is left. We've done 3 months of expenses now for Stetson and one bill paid to USGS as well. I'd like to make sure I know exactly how much is in the general fund right now, based on I know only some of the expenses paid to Stetson come from the general fund. The other have been fronted by Kern until they can get the reimbursement under the Prop 1 Distressed Counties grant. But I'd like to get a better read in terms of exactly how much is left in the general fund right now to start this new fiscal year, January 1.
Yeah, I'd be happy to try to give you that, but I can't because that's Alan's.
I know. I'm just saying. I think that we need some clarity there because I
was just confused.
Based on expenditures we've approved, I know there's less than 50,000 in the general fund right now.
Hearing Peter talk, he's throwing numbers out there. I'm trying to find them on here real quick, but I did the quick math. The first page it added up, so I will talk to Alan and figure out.
I'll give you
what
my
the
notes.
background
Okay.
is.
You can.
Yeah, then,
you can read my handwriting.
I will hand them to Alan and say, "Here's your task."
And actually, Alan's going to switch over to Ron here.
Yeah.
At the end of the year.
And
are you done, Mr. Page? Or you guys want?
The last thing I would say is as we welcome our new administrative staff for the coming year, is to let them know that I would appreciate if they could. Well, I know it's a big task and this is a work in progress, and we're working through a number of things. So I know the timing on bringing this budget probably wasn't quite what we'd like. But I also want to point out it doesn't meet the requirements of the JPA agreement we all signed and executed. That agreement says that we'll approve the budget at least 2 months prior to the beginning of the calendar year, and that we'll approve a full year budget, not a 6 month. So I want to try to get us to the point where we're complying with what we agreed to in the JPA agreement.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
Yeah, one more thought is there isn't a line item for administrative costs, and I'm not really sure how we're going to staff this as we move forward, because we're all doing services in kind, and you guys are going to take the helm. But I'm curious on if you're going to have a general manager or something, administrative assistant or whatever you want to call it, then that would probably be a cost borne by of our agency. So maybe there should also be a placeholder in there for administrative costs in 2018. And even if we don't know what it is, we could maybe project something so we know the cost may exist. But if we're not planning on doing that, then it's irrelevant.
I think I understood that when we started all this, the county, as being the chair, would bear all the administrative cost burdens. And I believe you have for the most part. And then the next year, well, 18 months, the city would take over for the 12 months and would bear the burden of those costs. As I look towards the future, I keep thinking so much of the work that the county, because you spent almost $1 million, did you not? The city will not have to bear because so much of it has been done. But there are new things coming up that the city will have to bear that burden. And that's why I asked at the last meeting, I want to see an agenda item on this, and thank goodness Alan and Ron and staff were all able to give us that, but we recognize it is not a full and correct item by any means. And the city not having the ability to collect water dollars as some other agencies are, we don't have $100, $200, $400, or $500,000 or $1 million sitting there waiting to be spent out. So we kind of need to know as a city, but even more than that, we need to know as a GSA where we are. And I know it cannot be done this next month, but I hope with the help of all the staffs working together, because this, as I do understand, the county is going to keep some of the money burdens, budget burdens with them. Is that correct? So, because the dollars are going to the county account.
Can you be more specific?
I can't, because I didn't know what exactly.
We'll talk about it as we go through. Well, for example, this PIO, Megan, that we're bringing Megan to help the PAC, that's going to be an expense that we're going to bear, but we're going to just.
Okay. So I just want everybody to understand this isn't written in concrete, and we're looking at it as we go along, because I've heard some of our city council members say, well, this is way too much. Well, without knowing what it is, I don't know how we can make that determination. I mean, $1 is way too much, but it is what we're going to have to spend. So that was it.
Any other comments? Oh, no. Let's wait. Let's get to the public. We need to open up for the public. Anybody in the public wishing to make comment on item number 9?
Stan Arturo. I believe at the last TAC meeting, it was stated that the Navy has already committed to the current update to the DRI report that's going to be coming out this year or released very soon. But there's also some additional improvements that are needed in order to make the current model useful in terms of being a management tool. And so there are, I have no idea, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 associated with that update. And apparently there's some meetings that are going to be going on in the near future to discuss that. But that might be part of the money difference between what's in the POA&M and what's in Stetson's budget. But obviously we need to resolve that issue and figure out what the Navy really is committed to, because if the Navy's not committed to it, then this body is going to have to figure out where to get that extra money. I would also like to echo what Commander Longbottom said just a minute ago with regard to what's in the POA&M, in that I had kind of expected to see two columns, one column of funding that the Groundwater Authority was going to pay, and another in-kind, or maybe not even have the in-kind in there, just have what the Groundwater Authority was going to pay. Because when you look through it and you see all these big numbers, it's difficult to understand who's paying what. And a lot of those numbers make it look like we got a lot more money than we do, because a lot of that in-kind has already been spent. We don't really have $3 million to spend over the next 2 years. I think we have closer to $1.5 million coming from the grant over the next 2 years. And you split that over 24 months, and that's not a lot of money. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let's hold off until we get the public, we close the public presentation. Anybody else? Okay, we'll close the public portion of this and bring it back to the board. Commander Longbottom.
Yeah, I think so. I talked with Gene and Stetson related to the model, and so something that's absolutely critical is we need to get the results of that DRI analysis sorted out, because when you read the draft report, which you had in your package, there's a lot of, we need to sort out what's required for the plan and what are just nice to haves. And so until we can figure out what is required, does the model as it stands today meet the DWR requirements for a groundwater model? And if the answer is yes, then the answer is yes. If there's things that need to happen to meet some type of requirement, then, absolutely we will do what we can, but I don't know what we can do until I know what that requirements list is so I can go get a cost proposal. So that's kind of, I've heard that there are changes that might need to happen to the groundwater model, but I think the two things are we need to be absolutely clear on which ones must happen and which ones are nice to have that we can work on moving forward. And then that allows us at least to go see what we can do.
Thank you, Manna.
And just as I might add, and if we do have things we need done, which I think we do, but if we do, we'll be working on a schedule too at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm looking for, where are we? I'm not item 9. Approval on item 9.
We just accept.
Receive and file.
Yeah,
that's what we did.
don't we need a budget to be able to operate next month? Instead of, I know there's still work to be done on it. We've asked for some clarification on some numbers, but don't we need an adopted budget to actually spend money next month?
Yeah, we can adjust it for the next meeting. When you look at proposed for the 50,000 carryover, you're going to have proposed and you're going to have the actual. And just keep in mind that the Prop 1 funding is just a filler number, just to balance the budget out, because actually the grant's much larger than that. So if we get it in March or April, so that number is just that Prop 1 number is whatever number was missing to make that equal out. So we can catch everything up next month and then figure out what our ending balance is and then put it in there and go from there.
I think the comment was a technical one. Do we need to approval, or is a receive and file sufficient?
Right. Does staff need authority from the board? Does staff need authority from the board to spend money? Do we need to adopt a budget, even if it's just a tentative 6-month one, in order to make sure that staff has authority to spend money?
Mr. Hall.
The process that we will follow here as a special district is not as strenuous as it is for the county, so we're okay.
With a receive and file?
With a receive and file, we're okay. We're not following our JPA, but the JPA is also thinking 40, 50, 60 years into the future. And, frankly, we didn't have budget numbers to put in a budget until past the 60-day point.
Right.
So we're catching up.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Paige. Okay, so I need a motion on item number 9.
I'll make that motion.
And the motion is what?
To receive and file
We have a motion to receive and file item 9.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Item number 10, Water Resource Manager Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple items first. Well, good morning, everybody. It's good to see you all again. We're all back together at least once a month when we get together. So it's good to see everybody. I normally don't get to make comments for the end of the meeting, so I'm going to do it now. I want to make sure wish everybody a happy and safe holiday season and Christmas. So that's done. Because typically at the end it's just the board members, and we don't get to say anything down at this end. Anyway, I also wanted to mention, Adam, that was awesome what you did, and as I promised, I did video it. So. I will send it to you.
It's Frank.
Frank, yeah, Frank.
Come fly with me.
There you go. I did video it. I will send it to you, and I'll send it to the staff. And you all have my email. If anybody wants it, just let me know. I'll send it to you because it was very good. Last item. I did provide the board with packets that were handed out at both the TAC and the PAC meetings. We wanted to make sure they got to the PAC and the TAC so that the members of the PAC and the TAC could see this information. We tried to get it there early, but the presentations were also made at both of those meetings. I think most people already know this, but I want to make sure the board knows it too. I did not attend either the TAC or the PAC. Part of it is I would have liked to attend these because there's a lot of good information there. Part of this is trying to conserve the cost of doing this work. I had 3 people at the TAC and 1 person at the PAC. So it seemed to me that was plenty of people. We're spending enough money trying to get stuff done. The people were there. Both Steve and Gene were making technical reports, and Jeff was handling the poems. So the people who were there had specific items to present and respond to. And frankly, they did a better job than I did because they're all working on those items. So that's what I'm going to do in the future is try to have the right people there for the right information. And when I need to be there, I certainly have committed. I will be there. So I want to make sure the board understood that. There are 4 items under the Water Resources Manager report. Items B and C. Frank did. We're going to go in the minutes now. You watch. Frank did a very good job, actually, more than we discussed earlier. So I'm going to be very brief there. But if it's okay, I'll go through all 4 of them briefly, and then we have questions on any of them, so we can keep moving because I know you want to try to get this thing up. I know you have obligations at noon, so I'll be as brief as I can. First is on the Prop 1 grant. As was reported at the TAC meeting, Tim Ross from DWR did make a presentation to give you an update on where things are at DWR. Mr. Ross indicated that we should be hearing something back early to mid-January, and that's fine. I will let you know that our staff is in touch with DWR on a regular basis. DWR staff has generally indicated it might be closer to late January. So hopefully sometime in January we'll be hearing something back, but that's the latest information we have. There were 75 to 80 applications submitted under Category 1 and Category 2. Not all of those, there's only 19 or 20, some 20-some, how many I've got here, that were actually the critically overdrafted basins, so we're not competing with all of those. So the funding pot for around 21, I guess. So the funding pot for us is limited, and certainly we're not competing with all 75 or 80, but there's a lot there. Obviously, they have a lot to do. So that's the update on Prop 1. We will provide an update as we go, and if anything comes up between meetings and it's important, we'll certainly get it out to everybody and let you all know. Under the groundwater modeling report that was made at the TAC, Jean Moran from my office made the presentation. It was on December 6th. And her report, her actual technical report, is attached and was provided to everyone. She also had a PowerPoint presentation. I've attached the PowerPoint presentation for you folks too. I want to report, but I want to make sure we're good with Commander Longbottom because this is the report I'm getting from my people, and we will coordinate afterward to make sure this is what's really happening. But the goal of the work being done on the model is to always make sure that whatever conclusions we make or whatever recommendations we are making, that they are coordinated with the Navy before we ever bring them to the PAC or the TAC or to you folks. I mean, that is key, and that's a commitment we made from the very beginning. And I want to make sure that happens. And as I mentioned, I'll be working with Commander Longbottom to make sure that continues going forward. Future work coming up. The GSP, the SIGMA requirements actually include having they don't require we have a digital model, but we have one and we want to use it if we can, and we want to make sure we make the best use of it, and we'll be coordinating that. In our next, this 6-month budget, which you just authorized, one of the first things we're going to be doing, which I know the public wants to hear, the stakeholders, I know the TAC wants to see it, but one of the first items we're going to be looking at is third-party review of other studies that have been done on water balance, and then providing that information back in a summary format, and also providing our review of a desktop water balance, of a desktop model of the basin, so we bring that back. So I wanted to give everybody a heads up that we will be, very soon, we will be talking about water balance in this basin and what it means, what other people think it means and what we think it means, and then bring it to the TAC and see what you folks think about it to make sure we're on the same page, because we all need to be on the same page of what we think the basin looks like before we move on to what the solutions are. And we have a lot of thoughts on solutions, but we're going to wait until we get on the same page with the water balance in the basin and what's going on, and we'll start addressing those, again, with the TAC and then bringing back to the board. So that is coming up. Included in that TAC meeting, we talked about it before, and this really leans toward the poem again. We pulled out, this has been talked about before, but I want to make sure I mentioned it. We pulled out what we consider to be potential and suggested items for future TAC meetings to discuss, actual agenda items. We put a lot of thought in, and this is for the PAC also. We put a lot of thought into what we looked at. The TAC should be addressing on the technical side, and the PAC on the outreach side. And then try to coordinate that with the scheduling to see when we thought we'd have things done, when it'd be appropriate to talk about those, and try to make some sense out of it all. It is a draft. It is very preliminary, and as I mentioned before, there has been input provided from all directions about what the PAC, but especially what the PAC should be looking at and not be looking at. So we do want input on that. And as Donna reported earlier, and it's sort of evolving as we walk through this, it seems to make sense that we're going to bring this in for the list of potential agenda items for the PAC. It's out for review. We'll get comments to bring it back to the PAC, have them look at those, make sure they're good with them. Other folks should be looking at it too. I know we've gotten comments from staff and from the board about what the PAC should or shouldn't be looking at. We certainly want that input. You have that in your packet. And then once we get that finalized, it seems appropriate, based on Donna's presentation, that using that as a guide, the PAC can then bring items to the board for approval as agenda items. As she mentioned, maybe 2 per meeting, and then 2 future items, and we'll start tracking. We'll start tracking on this, and we'll have the overall list as our guide, but we'll be able to track and pick these things up and move forward. I think that was just going back to the poem again, but I think that was, at least I took it as the direction that we got from Chairman Gleason, was to get everybody on the same page with the poem and use that poem as the guiding light going forward to make sure that we're hitting the marks on both the PAC meetings and the TAC meetings. It's in the poem, but we pulled it out and made a list just so it'd be a lot easier for folks to not have to go online and dig this stuff out and understand where we're headed. So that's what we're doing. So that was done on the modeling. That sort of talks about what was reported on the modeling. We will be coming back to the TAC to get comments on the report and the technical report on the modeling, probably at the next meeting. The next item was the data management system, the data management system report. Steve Reich from my office presented that report again at the December 6th TAC meeting, and he provided another demonstration of how the database works, a real-time demonstration where you can pull up the information, the technical information on what's going on in the basin. This last week, he sent out information to folks looking for input on login information. We are looking at, and this is in coordination again, not in coordination, but it's certainly giving recognition to concerns about security, especially the Navy. The 2 higher areas of priority we're looking at are the Navy and certainly private well owners. Municipal information is out there, not a real problem, but we are looking at providing some guidance on levels of access to the data and then getting log information for those folks. So that information has been distributed. We're looking for input back on that. That just went out, I think, just this week. So that's gone out for input. Phase 1 of the database preparation has been completed. That was authorized before. Phase 2 will include, again, input from the TAC and the stakeholders on what types of data that you want to see in the database. And we have a real good idea of what we want to put into the database to make sure we have everything that's needed to do the GSP. But there is a lot of other data out there, and we're going to get some input from you folks as to exactly what you want to have in this database. We'll be coordinating with Tim Parker and the work they're doing under SkyTim on the database they have. We've already exchanged quite a bit of data with those folks to make sure that there is open exchange of data, and we're not duplicating work, but we're making sure we have consistent data in both databases, because they have a lot of work to do for that task that they have also. I've mentioned user levels. He also did provide the budget for the rest of the database. He provided the 6-month budget, which we talked about today, but he also indicated the database work will continue through the end of the GSP, so that was also presented as part of his presentation to the TAC. And again, he'll be coming back to the TAC to get input back on what's been done so far and input on how we're going to address the next phase 2 of continuing with the database. So that's the report on the data management system. The poem has kind of been discussed quite a bit today, which was really good. Jeff did present my man Jeff Hesley did present the poem both at the TAC and at the PAC, so it was provided to both agencies. The action lists were provided to both committees, the potential action items. And I want to emphasize, I've said it many times already, but I want to make sure I emphasize that these are potential and suggested. We did try to kick these out. I tried to kick them out to Alan, especially because I find Alan to be a pretty good sounding board for us on where we're going. I did try to kick out these as a draft to Alan ahead of time. I think Alan got kind of tied up. We didn't get a lot of input back on them. So I made the call and I said, give them to the PAC, give them to the TAC, because ultimately whatever ends up on the agenda, the board can say yes or no. At least we've got it out there for discussion, and we'll get input back. So we did get that out there. We've got some really good comments, Commander Longbottom, some very good comments on the poem. I've got them written down, and we'll be coordinating those over the next couple of weeks to make sure we're all on the same page with the poem, and then kicking it back out. Every time we kick out a new poem, it will be numbered and certainly dated so that you'll know that you've got the latest version of the poem if we make changes. So I think that's my report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Well, you'll probably get a bunch. Let's open it up for the public for public comment on the Water Resource Manager report. Seeing none, we'll close it. We got 19 minutes before Peggy's got to be someplace. It's my granddaughter's birthday. Board member comments.
I'd like to thank the county staff and the Chairman Gleason for a wonderful 18 months. I appreciate what you've done. We at the city will endeavor to try to be almost as good as you are. Maybe we'll even be better in some things. Who knows? But,
hope so.
But we'll be working at it because we are a team and we work together. So I wish everyone a happy holiday and thank them.
Any other comments on item number 10? Yeah. Yes, sir.
The criticality I see in the report here, just to emphasize, is really understanding in this report what we definitively need to have done as soon as possible, so that I can go get a cost estimate and get money. Yep. I've got a few layers I have to go up to get money, and it tends to start 6 months ago as opposed to midway through the fiscal year. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you, and I'll be on the phone as soon as I get in my car. So,
anyone else? I have one. The POA&M, we're going to be able to put it in a format behind, blister it up here during the meeting so we all look at it and review it and public comment onto it. Okay, I'm looking for a motion to do something.
To receive and file?
Sure.
I'll make the motion to receive and file.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item number 11, General Manager's Report. Mr. Strand, or who's doing that? I'm sorry.
No general manager's report. Alan's on vacation.
Cool.
Time's clicking.
Right. Closing comments? Any members from the board?
I just a quick something.
Go for it.
Anyways, I do want to thank the county for bearing the cost. It's a huge expense, and even though they have a huge budget, they have a huge deficit as well. And so I know that it may seem like insignificant, but it's not. And I think we all realize that. To my earlier statement for administrative costs, I think I understand now that Ron's going to be the general manager and take, because he has so much spare time now. So I guess we won't have to put an administrative cost in the budget. So thank you, Ron. I really appreciate that. And then I want to thank the board. This is a difficult journey, and I think we're doing a pretty good job considering we're creating something from nothing. And there's no template to do that. And we have a diverse population of opinions continuously, which is what makes us healthy, but it also causes delays, and that's just the way it is. So I think that was it the Greeks that decided that was the best way to go. We just sit up here and debate, and then the smarter guy wins. So I do appreciate everybody's input and their time, and Merry Christmas to everybody as well.
Thanks, Brown. Comments? Closing comments?
So I just make one more. I forgot this actually. For the audience, I brought several copies. This is the packet, complete packet that was handed out at the Pack of the TAC. I have extras. If anybody wasn't at the Pack of the TAC and they want to get them, we're going to leave those here. So I want to make sure that announcement. And I wanted to say this before. I should say it right now. Sort of following up on Peter's comments. I want to let you know, we certainly sincerely appreciate the support of the board and what the board's doing. And I have worked with public boards for over 40 years, and I got to tell you guys, you're doing a great job. I mean, this is not an easy thing you're doing, and you're doing a great job of doing it step by step and making sure. One of the key things I think is really impressive that I've seen, I said this the first time I came here, and I'm going to say it again, is the way the board works with the stakeholders and the public, and the way the stakeholders are comfortable participating. We appreciate it 100% because we want to go forward with everybody on board. We have no intention of moving forward without everybody having the opportunity to provide input on what we're doing and making sure we're all going in the same direction. So we sincerely appreciate all of your input and what we're doing. So
thanks, Johnson. Okay, I got a couple of closing comments real quick. 18 months, it's been a pleasure. It's been a challenge. I've enjoyed it. I'd like to thank the PAC and the TAC. Donna, I think you got the toughest job in the room, and I'm sincerely appreciative for all you do. And Frank, thank you very much for taking this on. You guys are all volunteers, and I'm sincerely appreciative. I'd like to thank the board. Thank you, board members. Bob, you drive a long drive every month or whatever you do this. How many times a way you do this? Matt Kingsley is usually here. Thank you all. The public has done a phenomenal job with your patience, with your understanding, and with your coming to grips with a very challenging situation and understanding the depth of the problem. Forgive the pun. The depth meaning the complexity of the problem. I want you to know that there's a transition in place so you can have confidence in the future. The county has borne the major brunt of the responsibility for 18 months, and we said at the beginning that we're looking forward to receding into participatory role rather than a leadership role. That will be completed at the end of this meeting and at the first meeting of next month. Peggy and I have been in conversation about transitioning and how we're going to transition. Our staffs have been in conversation about how we're going to transition, what we need to do, how do we need to improve, what our goods and what our bads are, and what we can do to move forward. So I'm very comfortable that the transition has been going on for months and will continue going on after January until Peggy is completely comfortable and the city is completely comfortable with the GSA as we've presented it and transitioned it. So I have every confidence in that. I'm also will let you know that the China Lake Alliance, Dave Janis, has been good enough to set up a meeting with Peggy, myself, and the Admiral, so that we are going to, in the next couple of days, December 22nd, where we're going to sit down with the Navy and formally give them a complete rundown, explaining to them what we've done in the past year, what the transition is all about, and what we can expect next year. And we're going to let the Admiral get him very comfortable with where we are and how we're moving forward. With that, I'm done. Any other closing comments? With no more closing comments, we're going to close this meeting and go to closed session.